Right, let's move on to our second manager today. Let's talk about Roy Hodgson at Crystal Palace. It may well be his last season. His contract comes to an end in the summer, and there's been no move yet to extend it. Roy is possibly the most experienced manager that we've talked about on this podcast. I'm not actually 100% confident of that, Mike. I'd have to wait up alongside Neil Warnock, but he's right up there anyway. And he's done just about everything. He's managed in every competition. He's managed numerous clubs across, most continents as well. And he finds himself at Crystal Palace. It's been a real mixed bag this season, but there's no doubt that experience at times, it really helps.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's phenomenal, his experience. And this is Roy Hodgson's flow state, is to want to explore new territory all the time. And, from a very early age, when it was almost unheard of in English football for, people from within English football to go look, broadening the horizons overseas and looking for new experiences and seeing, we do tend to be such, and less so nowadays, but there were, for a good 20 years, was so insular in the way that we saw everything and didn't really, see things from the other cultures and other, nations' perspective on football. Roy Hodgson was one of the first to get out there and start seeing things from these new perspectives. And I think it's helped him enormously. And, he's kind of settled down in later years, in later life, and kind of stuck around the Premier League. But yeah, he's got such a vast overview of the game, and any situation he's able to kind of pattern recognize the possible implications, law changes, things like that. And he's been one of the most fascinating managers to listen to about VAR, because he doesn't just lambast it. He kind of unpacks, some of the implications of the way that the game is going because of the way that things are dealt with. I think his future, without a shadow of a doubt, I think he should become one of these figures like, Howard Wilkinson's one of those names that's always, if there's any panel about the way the game should be going, Howard Wilkinson's on that panel. That should be Roy Hodgson for the next 20 years. As soon as you've got a decision to make about the sake of the game, Roy Hodgson should be the first person you call up, because his ability to make connections and see things that people possibly haven't seen before. He's one of the most fascinating managers to listen to when you actually, you get beyond the voice. Sometimes you listen to the voice and you might think, oh, well, there's not much juice in this interview. But you actually, you transcribe some of his interviews and you actually listen to what he's saying. And he's got so much knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah, and very, very reasoned as well with everything he says. It's almost like before he does his interviews, he's already taken that step back in his mind and diffused the situation and looked at it from an analytical point of view. It's no surprise then to learn that he's done several lectures down the years as well, to upcoming coaches and numerous associations on the game, the overarching game, but also on an individual basis. And yeah, like you say, fascinating to listen to. But yeah, he seems to be very good at just tempering things and making sure that everything is calm and under control at all times.
Yeah, logical and detached, I would say. He always comes with a cool and calm perspective. He's one of the, there's not many managers that can so consistently turn up to the camera so soon after the game and have already got their answers formulated in the mind, sometimes I think he doesn't need to go back and review and, video analysis and stuff like that to understand what's just happened in a game. I think he's got so much wealth of experience now, but because it's the kind of experience that goes exploring the world, tries to make new connections and new patterns that people haven't made before. It makes him land on quicker answers because, he gets asked something sometimes and he can go 2 steps removed from the question he's been asked and then come back to the question and answer the question. And you're like, that's so enlightening, the way he's done it and the way, because it's not always with a straight answer. It's certainly not always with a cliche where he's concerned. There's always a bigger picture to look at with any, and it can be quite amusing sometimes as well when there's a lazy question, because, everybody's capable of a lazy question. You're going through the motions as an interviewer from time to time. You just throw in a lazy question and he's just like, well, you say that, but then, we'll kind of just take the question apart from a very sort of overview perspective. And I just find him fascinating because I just think if you could unpack so many problems if you actually, you get to sit down with him for any length of time. There's not much he wouldn't have an answer for, and it'd be a real enlightening answer.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we talk about his thirst for new cultures and to, widen his horizons, because there have been accounts, I've read a couple. Simon Davis, who was at Fulham under him, is one of these, who basically said that the training sessions with Roy are pretty much the same every day. First of all, he loves to be on the training ground, Roy Hodgson, but he said basically it's the same drills, the same sets of systems each and every day. And there is the in-joke. A lot of players talk about how it's boring and it's predictable. But actually, he says, once it starts working on the pitch, once you start getting the results, you come to realize why Roy is making you do the same things over and over again.
Yeah, and I mean, you can even go back to, say, Sir Alex Ferguson in this regard. Repetition is key. He always believed that repetition is key to everything. And I think that's just one of those connections that, I think Hodgson, the way he makes decisions and the way he makes judgments is that once, he'll go around exploring the world and finding all these different ways that different people do things. And then once he lands on his answer, if this is the way things should be done, then, there's kind of no change in his mind. And he's clearly arrived at this point where he's realized that the thing that works more consistently than anything else is those daily habits, is that repetition day in, day out. And it's almost kind of become an aspiration for him that, it's just, you do the right daily habits day in, day out on the training ground, and that series of repetition, nothing sticks in a player's mind more than muscle memory of doing the same things day in, day out. So, yeah, it's this interesting character, because it is a flip side. You see someone who explores the world, and then at the same time, his day in, day out can be, so repetitive. It seems to be a contradiction, but within that is, it's kind of the flip side. It's the two things do go together, as counterintuitive as it sounds. It's because in his younger years, he's gone and done all this exploring first. And then as he's got older, because we all develop, it's really hard to type profile 60, 70-year-old people, because the weaker functions, the childlike functions, become more developed, So it's basically where you've got these sides of your personality that are basically like children. Well, you get to 60, 70, 80 years old and they're not, they're almost adult-like, because even though you use those functions less, you over such a period of time now, you kind of get to a certain stage of life and you want to understand these things better. So it's almost like he's unearthed his inner Kenny Jackett or someone, it's like the older he's got, the more experience he's got within the game, he's kind of begin to see things from the perspective of people with a complete opposite personality, and realize himself, this is what works. This is what keeps Crystal Palace in the Premier League season on season. Even though my innate personality is to potentially change things up, if I'd enjoy that myself, I know what's going to work is the repetition thing. It's everybody understanding, our distances as a back four and all of these different kinds of things. And, there's certain underlying, behaviors as a team that Roy Hodgson knows has probably got, a list of so many that if we get these things bang on right, everything else will kind of take care of itself. We will get so many points in a season. We will finish, comfortably above the dotted line and survival. And I think he's become more of this manager because of the jobs he's been given, basically. And that's why we've seen this side of him come out.
Yeah, and we talked about Thomas Tuchel and the fact that he gave everyone a chance, and he's willing to mix it up and throw in a few curveballs every now and again. Roy Hodgson is probably one of those managers who is more of he has trusty lieutenants, I guess. And, once you're in a Roy Hodgson side and you're performing to the standards that he wants week in, week out, he tends to stick by you as well. There's that mutual respect between player and coach. And even through bad patches, Roy is one of those coaches who doesn't tend to tweak things too much. He tends to believe that the players he's got there at his disposal and he has on the training ground on a daily basis will be able to play through the bad patch and come out on the other side.
Yeah, very similar, really. Again, repetition and consistency, that's become an increase in value throughout his career, and certainly towards this later stages of his career. It's almost like a little bit, we talked about Paul Cook and almost players almost being like made guys. It's that will be one of his core principles, is that, if we, not just tactically what we do on the training ground day in, day out, and how that, translates on the pitch in terms of being able to do things on muscle memory, but if you're doing it with the same personnel week in, week out, in key positions, certain players able to do certain jobs and understand the job the best. I think he values players that are quick on the uptake logically as well. I think he's a very logical person. And I think if he knows he can just implant and, pass an idea onto somebody and they're quick on the uptake, they get it straight away. I think those are the kinds of players that become favourites under Hodgson, because I don't think he can afford to have too many players in the side that don't immediately, the penny doesn't drop straight away when he tries to, whenever he does try to quickly impart new information because a certain game needs something a little bit, he needs to impart new information on the way that a game is changing.
Does that leave fringe players potentially frustrated working under Hodgson, not being given as much chance, I guess, to break in?
Yeah, possibly. But that, again, that's not necessarily a strength for Hodgson, is to understand, this is the thing with the England job. I think, one of the big aspects of the England job is kind of managing the whole culture around the England team. And I don't think that was Hodgson's skill set. He's an analyst. He's a tactics man. He's he loves the game of football as a game that's a problem to be solved. I don't think he's necessarily, it's not to say he's a bad people person, but it's not the first thought that comes to mind is how to motivate people, or what emotional needs certain players might need. Now, a lot of that around the England job, I mean, you think of losing to Iceland on the day that, the Brexit vote and all of the, there's a lot that goes on around England, with the press and the media. And Gareth Southgate is probably a much better fit because he really understands that, all of that side. But for Hodgson, no, he's not. He's less of a people person. I won't say he's not a people person, because, he's clearly conscious of that side of things, and it's all part of the experience he's built up. But it's not his go-to. His first, what juices him is understanding. He's trying to understand a football problem or deal with football problems day in, day out and match by match.
Personally, though, he's a very humble man. He's very grounded. Sometimes described as the nicest man in football, although there's a bit of competition, I think, around in terms of managers at the moment. But players are always very complimentary of him as well, whether that is from his time in Sweden or at Fulham, or, even at Liverpool as well, where things didn't go right. The players are still very, very complimentary of him. He's been seen on the tube as well several times going into work. So feet on the ground, very much so with Roy Hodgson. And that must really rub off on the young players, particularly at Crystal Palace, where a lot of them have come through the academy and have had various different backgrounds, working their way up. And to have this coach who's so well respected, but also such a humble gentleman, must really sort of rub off on them.
Yeah, and I think it's nice. I mean, this might is this going to be his last job in football at the top level? Quite possibly. I mean, the rumours seem to be that he is going to be leaving Crystal Palace in the summer. There's nothing official yet that I'm aware of, but that seems to. But there's something romantic and nice about the fact that a guy from Croydon is potentially going to finish his managerial career in the Premier League, having been a success. He's fulfilled the brief of what was required of him at Crystal Palace, and it's a fantastic career potentially coming to an end at his hometown club, and he's if that is the case, I think there's something really nice about that, and it can be really tough for managers after the England job hasn't gone the way you wanted it to, but I think the job that Hodgson has done at Crystal Palace, I think he's bounced back better than most. You think of Steve McLaren, for example, and I don't think the job that Roy Hodgson did as England manager, you talk about Sven-Goran Eriksson and Fabio Capello, were massive names that came in with better squads potentially than what Hodgson had. He was very much in between sort of cycles when Hodgson came in, and he kind of got the England team back on track. So I think that kind of explains why he's come out of the England job and been able to get back on his feet quite quickly. He's kind of got the respect back And here we are now. He's possibly in his final job with his hometown club, having fulfilled his brief and got everything just gone out as the way you would imagine he would like to go out.
And finally, Mike, what does the future hold for Roy Hodgson then? If we believe he's retiring from top level management, but to me, he doesn't seem like the sort of man who is content with a spot of gardening and some crown green bowls and a double bill of Countdown. I feel like he will probably want to get back out there, but as you say earlier, maybe in some sort of advisory capacity for the FA, that might be the route now.
I think he's got to be kept in football. You talk about these panels for these different, whether it's development, whether it's rule changes, whether it, anything to do with those kinds of things. I think Roy Hodgson, with his worldwide experience, with his Premier League experience, with his international football experience, of different cultures, different generational cycles, he's still managing millennial footballers now with as much success as he had managing Generation X footballers. He literally ticks every single box going. He's got to be on all of these panels. He's got to be one of the first people that's called up because of his personality and the way he's not afraid to challenge authority. He's not afraid to challenge and call out sometimes when there might be someone, some of these things get passed through with basic stupidity underlying the change that's being made. And everybody's too scared to really say, Roy Hodgson he won't toe the party line if something looks stupid to him. He will come out and be radically honest in that sense. But at the same time, because of his age, has developed over time this real respect for the way things have always been done. So he's got the traditional side of him, but he's also, he's very forward thinking for someone of his age, which, a lot of people go into these roles in later life and possibly don't have they always want things to be the way they've always been. Roy Hodgson's not like that at all. I think he's absolutely perfect for anything to do with the way that the future that football has.
If you like what you've heard about Roy Hodgson and you want to use manager profiling to improve your betting, then Mike, there is a case study available.
Yeah, I've been studying manager profiling now for about 9 months, and yeah, it's been really helpful in my betting because I kind of got really frustrated with the way it was going with data science and the mathematics side, the numbers side of the game. It was getting harder and harder to make a profit, and it's just complete reframe from using manager profiling. So it's been really good. Yeah, lots of profits, and long may it continue.